Then time for the final match where they introduce some of the luminaries. First up, it is Ric Flair. Did you note the graphic?
No, what?
21-time champion now. So you can take your 16 times WWE and keep chugging away at it. We're going to recognize more of his title reigns, which this is far more accurate than the 16.
Like, and what's the controversy? I mean, without maybe spending too much time on it, like, what?
There's just been a bunch of his title changes that are not recognized in that 16 number.
Why does WWE not recognize them?
We're celebrating 40 years of WrestleMania, 39 years after. I can't tell.
But what's controversial about those particular 5 title changes?
You'd have to ask them why they acknowledge some and don't acknowledge others.
That's strange. Okay.
The guest timekeeper is Ricky Steamboat. And then in the audience, they showed Paul Walker-Hausen and then Nikita Koloff, Magnum TA, and Scotty Riggs. If you have not seen the Scotty Riggs video with DDP, it's amazing. The one they released this week with him and Buff Bagwell. I mean, it's captivating. Like what he has done with some of these individuals. Like I won't, you should certainly watch it. Like Scotty Riggs was in a really bad place and literally his life was saved. Wow. It's a really fascinating video that they put out this week.
Somebody in the chat mentioned Denise Salcedo shot a video or posted something showing Luger and DDP in attendance as well.
Okay, so they were there. I'm surprised they didn't show them on the broadcast, but anyway. The final showtime is the themed entrance where Sting walks into an empty theater and it opens up the curtains and Sting watches all of these still shots of his career, minus things like, WCW, Jim Crockett Promotions, and WWE, which I guess did not feel
you had some still contribute. You had some still photos.
Okay. Well, not WWE shots, I can promise you that. But we got, a pretty nice retrospective here of the footage was mainly reserved for New Japan, AEW, some shots of him with Jim Hellwig, the final Nitro with Ric Flair. They had a still shot of a bunch of Muda. And then the curtain closes and Sting looks into the camera. It's showtime for the last time. Let's do this. And out walks his sons, Surfer Sting and Wolfpack Sting.
Dude, this was amazing.
Dude,
this was amazing.
His son, the Surfer Sting version. I mean, this guy, looked
just perfect in this jacket. I mean, he's wearing the Great American Bash jacket.
This was pretty. Like when he walked out, I think there were fans that thought, "Oh my God, he dyed his hair blonde for his final night."
Oh, it was the same effect as the Mariah May entrance.
Can't say I was doing a double take when Wolfpack Sting came out.
Maybe even a bit slimmer than Steve Borden at that age.
With due respect. Yeah. So they're coming out to Sting's AEW theme, and then we go into Seek and Destroy. And you've got like the crowd singing along. This entrance was amazing.
So great. So great. I mean, the video was outstanding. Just like had all the sort of production that I think you would expect, for the magnitude of an event like this. They completely delivered it, including, I think, callbacks to the past here.
This was one of the best pieces of production that AEW has put together, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So he is out. I mean, the place is going wild. Let me just say this. The Young Bucks were the perfect opponents for this last match. They were such awesome heels in this match. I just thought they were amazing. Like this crowd hated them. I just thought they were tremendous in this match. So
you don't think FTR would have achieved the same, right? Because they'd be baby faces and it'd be maybe a hard pivot to make them heels, perhaps.
I don't think you're having this type of match with FTR. It'd be a very different match. So they get into it's a brawl right away. It's a tornado match. We're bringing out tables, and then Darby hits his coffin drop to the floor, which Jim Ross just notes, the little bastards fearless. Just wait, Jim.
Yeah.
So Sting brings out a pane of glass, the operative word being pain. And they place this piece of glass on top of these chairs on the floor. Would they remember this pane of glass later on? I hope so. Just remember that glass is there on those chairs. And Sting misses Nick with the bat and hits the glass. It doesn't break, so he just takes the bat and just smashes it anyway, like he's just ransacking a convenience store.
Well, you paid for this expensive.
He's like, who's gonna break this? So just swings at it. Bucks are getting a ton of heat here. They're chanting F the Bucks, and they bring out the world's largest ladder into the ring. They powerbomb Darby onto this ladder, and then he fights back, hitting this code red. Meanwhile, Sting is taken out momentarily when he is on the stage, and they end up suplexing Sting off of the stage through a table, and that gives Sting his breather for about 3 minutes.
That was his break.
Match. That was his break, okay?
Yeah.
His water break was taking a suplex off a stage through a table on the floor. So Darby is getting destroyed here in the ring when he makes his comeback, and as we mentioned, hit the code red, sets up the ladder above the chairs, and places Nick onto the pane of glass on the chairs. This is one of those, if you hit your target, it's an awful idea. He dives for this swanton. This man clearly, I'm sure this man has an attachment to his life, but I think he's one of those guys, if things go wrong, then at least it's going to be shot on pay-per-view. He dives and just crashes through this pane of glass. And it is at the point that this glass shatters that you realize pretty goddamn quickly, this is not gimmicked glass. And he turns over, and dude, it is like a million red ants are just coming out of his body, but it's blood. The punctures throughout his back are numerous. And this is what we are seeing. And this man, I thought they had like taken him to the back and he was going to make his big comeback. For like 8 minutes, he's gone. And they do this wide shot. He's in this same position for this whole 8 minutes, just laying here in this glass, bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. There are few things I've seen in wrestling that are genuinely shocking to me.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't be with this specific performer, but this was one of them. And this guy had a death wish of, how can I thank this man for being my partner, risking death for his final match? That's how I'm going to repay him. Way, you never have to do this to thank me, okay? Please.
You don't want this for Christmas, me falling through a glass off a ladder?
Oh.
Yeah.
You remember when there was a big thing about like Goldberg wanted to make it real glass that he would put his arm through?
Mm-hmm.
He insisted on real glass. They didn't want to gimmick it. And he ended up like slicing his arm up.
We all remember that first real glass.
There's a lesson here about using real glass. Real glass is undefeated in pro wrestling.
Listen, I'll say real glass or not. I mean, I think the more severe damage was him falling off the ladder through like no padding whatsoever on these chairs and basically smatting onto the mat from that height. It's insane. Even for Darby Allin, this was one of the more upsetting and severe bumps that we've ever seen him take. But he was fine, finished the match. So, I mean, it's just kind of Darby Allin doing Darby Allin things.
Fine.
Fine for Darby Allin.
He stood up.
He was talking on the microphone. I mean, I don't think he's being taken to a hospital, right? Like he's bottom line, like he needed a stunt that was going to top all the other ones that he had done in the past. And this, I'm not going to say maybe did that, but it came very, very close. This was his WrestleMania, certainly.
So Darby is momentarily taken away from the match. Sting returns because no one else was going to be making a comeback on the Bucks. And dude, Sting just went into his next gear. He's like, I've got 5 minutes left of my career, and I'm just going all out with these guys, with the Young Bucks. So he places Matt onto a table, and Sting climbs the big ladder. Matt stops him. Nick sets up another pane of glass in the corner, and Matt sends Sting through the table, but he just pops up and roars, as does the crowd. The Bucks take him. They hip toss Sting through the pane of glass in the corner, hit him with a low blow, and then there's a scorpion death drop onto Sting for a 2 count. Nick grabs the tag belt. Ricky Steamboat stops him, so Matt attacks Steamboat. Flair's crawling in to check on Sting. He's waving off the Bucks. At one point, Rick just tells Matt, fuck off, and they double super kick Ric Flair. Then they double super kick Ricky off the apron. There's a belt shot by Matt. Sting kicks out again. They do the Michael spot, we're not sorry, we hate you, with double super kicks, and Sting no-sells the super kicks, fires up, crowd goes wild, and he hits a scorpion death drop to Matt. They come back with the EVP trigger. Now the audience, they're like, that's it. But Sting kicks out. They shake his hand, hit him with another EVP trigger, and Sting, I'm not going to call this a kick out. This was more like a convulsion out. Okay. That's what he did to stop the cover. But his shoulder came off the mat and he just waves it on, eats a double super kick, and they go for the renamed TK driver when Darby comes back from the dead and shoves Nick off the top through a table. There's a death drop to Matt for the near fall, and then a coffin drop onto Matt, followed by the Scorpion Deathlock applied. Matt Jackson taps out in 21 minutes as Sting gets to go off as one of the AEW tag champions and gets the win at the Greensboro Coliseum.
Incredible. There was maybe some talk about what finish they were going to go with for this match, whether or not Sting would lose, whether or not he would win the championship. I always maintained that the finish that I wanted to see was the one that provided the most emotional catharsis. You could have gone both ways depending on which story you wanted to tell. And for this story that they told tonight, this was the perfect finish, having Sting leave as champion. That final call to the crowd as he was about to turn over for that Scorpion Deathlock, I thought was like that emotional high, that I think I was looking for in a match like this. The type of like moment where you finally are faced with, I think, the reality that this is a man about to clock out. This is a man who's about to, put the end period of on an incredible career, and they hit it. I thought this match was great. Like all of matches during this like very unique AEW run, they delivered on the appeal of seeing basically a 60-something-year-old man who's on his second career, coming off of spinal stenosis, taking part in these crazy spot fests, jumping off of crazy shit. They gave you that and more, like in the form of 2 like falls through the ladder, 1 off a ramp, 1 fall through glass. They gave you a lot of nostalgia in the form of like, his kids dressing up as him in that excellent video. And then you got a Darby Allin match with one of the craziest Darby Allin bumps that I've ever seen. So you got even Flair and Steamboat interactions. So they gave you like pretty much everything that I think you could be asking for, that you might have been expecting for a scenario like this.
I mean, it was like you checked off the box, I think, of everything you would have wanted out of this one. It's a small thing, but to me, maybe one, I'm not going to say the most impressive thing, but one of was Sting gets on the mic after this 21-minute match. Dude isn't blowing up. Dude isn't like even, it was incredible at how fresh he felt, like talking afterwards. Like,
yeah,
we've heard some guys after matches and dude, they're like, can barely even get a word out after something like this. And he seemed like he was just fine after this thing. He
had
incredible.
More left. Like, and I noticed this after the match with Starks and Big Bill. Like, he did not seem gassed at all, and the man was active throughout the entire match, doing crazy things in tornado style. So clearly, the man had gotten himself in incredible shape, and I'm sure ended up talking way past the. Maybe he's still talking now.
He thanked all of Greensboro ever since the first clash in '88 in this building. Thanks, Ric Flair. He wanted to give the fans a night they wouldn't forget. It's one I will never forget. Calls Darby the greatest partner he's ever had. The biggest understatement of the year. Darby is a risk taker and says, so am I. Not like that, though. And Darby is like giving him the sign-off warning, like we're about to get cut off. The crowd's chanting, you still got it. And then the immortal last words, I've got to wait. I'm getting cues as the show fades to black, and it fades to black on his career. And that was the end of what I thought was a phenomenal pay-per-view overall. And I don't know how Darby Allin will be alive after this match, but he is. But yeah, I think for a 21-minute match, I think you gave people everything they would have wanted. And even when we have seen Sting in some of the matches where you can see it's like it's probably been a lot for him to, he has stood out in, there's been some not as pretty performances, but you went out on a really, really strong one here. Nothing looked out of place. And thankfully he decided, you know what, Darby's going to be the one to dive off the ladder and not me.
He took a little dive, I suppose. He took a power bomb off a ladder. He fell off a stage as well. So, you know.
Well, I was saying the big spot
Oh,
reserved
the
for
big one, yeah.
Darby.
Yeah, no, this Sting run has really been unprecedented, I would say. You know, for somebody, again, coming off of spinal stenosis, even not coming off of spinal stenosis in their 60s, to make a career off of doing this sort of thing, especially when you've had the career that you've already had, like Sting, um, is remarkable and tells you a lot about maybe his mentality of simply wanting to entertain people, you know, even at the risk of his own sort of health. It tells you a lot about how a Tony Khan views veterans and how he might treat veterans versus how we've seen veterans treated in the past in professional wrestling. So, man, can a run like this be topped, you know, if you're somebody in a similar position?
I don't think we're going to see too many comparables of people at 64 doing this, along with the back issues that this guy had, and who knows, God knows what. Like, this guy had massive knee surgery in 1990 that slowed him down. I don't even know if I want to see people try and top this, but I will say, as much as you can look at, yes, I definitely agree in the sense of Tony Khan wanting to put this guy on that pedestal as our legendary figure and book him as such. This run, while the booking was a huge asset, this was a guy that saw this locker room and wanted to aspire to not stand out in a negative way. That this guy wanted to pick his spots. He was not going to be a weekly. He could not do these things weekly. He couldn't even do these monthly. But when called upon, he could get ready. And 9 times out of 10, they worked. And he worked his ass off in doing stuff that I would be stunned that someone with this medical history would even attempt. But he did do it. And hopefully he's got a comfortable remainder of his life after this run, because it's one thing to watch these and marvel at them, but we're not the guy waking up the next day that has to deal with the repercussions of what he put physically into this run. But it is admirable for someone that could have done a fraction of it, and he wouldn't have been criticized by that locker room. He would have still made the same amount of money, but he saw this locker room and did not want to embarrass himself, and he definitely did not.
What do you see for him after this?
I would see him as someone that, if I was AEW, that I would want as sort of my ambassador, somebody that can be utilized, that can be, you know, if you could incorporate just into different ways. Like, there is still a lot of value in the Sting character, but I definitely do not want to see this guy do a comeback at any point. And I hope he doesn't want to do that either. That's
No.
As much as this feels definitive, like, there's always that side of, man, that last one went so well, I know I could do it again. And that's
You're
the
taking a
danger.
risk every single time. Yeah, and I'm not even talking about the dives. I'm talking about a regular bump, you know, for a man his age. And he's tempted fate, I think, enough.
The fact that this guy, the idea of Wembley was thrown at him and he was like, no, this is it for me. It does tell me he knows this is the end result, but you always go with that caveat in wrestling. But I think largely the success of this show was people believing this truly is the end, that he's not going to be one of those guys that a year from now AEW needs something, or he's got that itch to do this again.
I think you should take a long break, like, you know, maybe give one final speech on television, perhaps like a formal, you know, goodbye that doesn't get cut off, and deliver that speech that I think we all want to hear from him. And then I think he should take a long break, let Darby climb Mount Everest, and then maybe eventually come back, ease his way in, perhaps, hopefully. Like, I could see them trying him in a commentary role, at least as a guest spot. Maybe eventually something of a managerial role as well, where he speaks a little bit more. But if he chooses to just completely stay out of the spotlight, I mean, I think that's perfectly fine too. Again, how could you top a send off like this?